This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also for the most part unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 108th time ever, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live. Coming to you from the Reviewing Network studios, of course. It is the last day of summer. Tomorrow begins fall. And, pretty slow news week, mostly because of the big thing that broke in the middle of the week, which we'll get to that as we go on here. But before that, not a whole lot of big news stories going around. But like I said, something big happened over the course of the week that has taken up most of the news. But we'll get to that and my thoughts on that later on when we get to the actual news stories. But before we do any of that, let's begin with where I usually start off with here. And that is, of course, the weekend box office. And the box office overall, it's interesting. I'll give it that. It's a very interesting box office with... That's also kind of not at the same time. It's a very odd week overall when you really think about what's going on in the world. But anyway, let's start off with number 5 here. The Long Walk, which brought in $6.3 million, only dropping 46% from last weekend, which is actually not that bad for this movie. $22.7 million after 2 weeks. If you count the worldwide numbers, it's up to $25.6 million. And I'm trying to remember what the... I lost my train of thought there for a second. I'm trying to find the budget here. I can't remember what it was. I think it was less than $20 million, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, $20 million. So yeah, they made their budget back. They're good to go on there. So it's instant profit from them from this point going forward. Moving on to number 2. I'm confused right now. I'm sorry. Number 4. Jesus. Number 4, Downton Abbey, the grand finale, which... had a staggering drop-off from last week, 65% from the previous week, brought in $6.3 million, bringing its 2-week total now to $31.6 million. If you count the worldwide numbers, it's up to $59.5 million. And I don't know how it's doing compared to the other movies in the series. I think the second one... When did the second one come out? Was it 2022 or 2021? When did the second Downton Abbey movie come out? May of 2022. I forgot it was actually a summer release that year, but yeah, but the 2022 release of the second film was definitely not as big as this one was. And even by big, it really wasn't spectacular numbers. I mean, that's in second weekend, the second Downton Abbey movie brought in $28 million after 2 weekends, so it's already above that. But when you take in the numbers from the first movie's release in 2019, where is it? Yeah, that one's up to $58 million. So it's not as good as the first movie, but it's better than the second film. So take that for what you will. It wasn't really that big of a budgeted movie anyway, if I remember correctly. Plus, it's going to make its money back mostly from overseas business. So they're happy with that overall at Focus Features, a.k.a. Universal. Moving on to number 3 this weekend, we have The Conjuring: Last Rites, which dropped 50% from last week, $13 million overall, $151.1 million after 3 weeks. It's brought in over $399 million. Like, literally, it's 22,000 away from $400 million worldwide. So, instant profit for that movie. It was a big hit right from the get-go. It's been hanging on for a good chunk of the month of September. And, yeah, doing good business overall. But then that brings us to the only new release that made it into the top 5 this weekend, and that is, of course, number 2, which is Him, the Jordan Peele-produced movie about the trials of a young up-and-coming football player training at the isolated compound of an aging, nearly retired quarterback played by Marlon Wayans. And this movie, of course, had the billing of producer Jordan Peele, whose name's attached to this. And as I said in my review yesterday, it's excuse me. As I said in my review, it's a film where... you have to know going into it that it's a Jordan Peele-produced movie. It's not a film he wrote or directed, and that really does play into the overall appreciation of the movie, because I think the movie overall is not that great. Marlon Wayans, I think, is the highlight of the film. He's the strongest performance in that movie, and he's the reason why that film has any noteworthiness to it. It makes it worth memorable. As you can see on this picture that I'm looking at here, as I'm looking up the information here, like Marlon Wayans is giving me this look like, that's right, buddy, you better say something good about my movie. He actually did go off on people who didn't like his movie, but I guarantee you most of those people were looking at this going like, well, we don't like it because we like it because we don't like, you're the best thing about the movie. We think the rest of the movie is pretty much garbage. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. He said, art is to be interpreted and it's subjective. And he basically went on a thing to say, just be clear, I respect critics. Their job is to critique. I respect their work. It shapes our industry. But an opinion does not always mean in everyone's opinion. It's everyone's opinion. So movies are ahead of the curve. Innovation is not always embraced. And art is to be interpreted and is subjective. I've had a career of making classic movies that weren't critically received. And those movies wanted to become classics. I don't know. Does anyone consider the scary movie films classics? Like, Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, White Chicks, Little Man. Like, I get what he's trying to say here, but at the same time, this guy is the least of this film's problems. This is a movie where everything else about the movie just tries way too hard to be a Jordan Peele venture, and it's clearly not his movie overall. Like, it's clearly not a film that he has a big hand in writing the script and all. The movie didn't do bad business either. It bought it $13.5 million, which isn't great overall, but it's certainly better than I think it could have been, especially with the budget that it had. It's half its budget. It's $27 million was the overall budget, but it's probably a movie that's going to be coming and going soon, but it should do decent enough business to get at least its budget back overall. But yeah, I really think this movie could have been a whole lot better if Jordan Peele was more involved in it, writing and directing it. But Marlon Wayans is the best thing about the movie. He's the one thing that carries the film all the way to the end. I mean, if the rest of the movie was great, this would be a movie I would highly recommend. But as it is, I can't really go down that path. So anyway, that's my thoughts on him. Number one this weekend, which was number one last week, despite a massive drop-off, Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, the movie, Infinity Castle, which brought in $17.3 million, dropping 75% from last week, bringing its two-week total to $104.7 million domestically. And if you count worldwide numbers, it's up to $555 million. Still know nothing about these movies in particular, so I can't really say if they're any good or not. But, hey, doing better business than some of the other new releases that came out this week. A lot of the new releases this week did not do very well. The biggest of the most notable ones was A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which was Margot Robbie's first major feature film after a success with Barbie a couple years ago. And it's a story about a pair of strangers and the unimaginable journey that ties them together. David and Sarah find themselves on a funny, fantastical adventure, David's played by Colin Farrell, where they get to relive important moments from the past and possibly after their future. And this movie had a budget of $45 million, and it only brought in $3.5 million domestically. Did a little bit better worldwide, but not by that much, $8 million. And this thing cost $45 million to make. So, yeah, needless to say, this is a movie that was not the big hit they were hoping for. And the critics were not too keen of it either. In fact, it got largely panned by critics. There's apparently a part where there's a lot of Burger King product placements that's characterized as cringing in your seats, rather disappointing and so blatant that even the lead actors look like they're reconsidering their career choices. Like, and for that, I'm kind of fascinated. I kind of want to see this movie, because this sounds like Here, that movie that came out last year. A movie that is probably visually gorgeous to look at, but has a feel of, it has its head so far up its butt, and then it has scenes that are supposed to be these uplifting situations and feelings and all that, and it just makes you want to laugh out loud. Like, the scene I always remember from Here is where they're taking the pictures with the baby, and one of the kids knocks the baby off the footstool, and he goes head first into the ground like Family Guy. Like, you know how Family Guy, there'll be people who are drunk and like they collapse and like with their legs up in the air and all that type of stuff. Like, that's what it felt like. And that movie was not great, but I was laughing so hard during those scenes in that movie. If this movie is like that, I kind of want to see this movie to see how insane and how over the top and crazy this gets. But yeah, that's A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which I'm actually kind of surprised I've yet to hear anybody say it's a big, bold, beautiful bomb. And then there was another movie that came out this weekend from Angel Studios, and that was The Senior, which only brought in $2.7 million, which is about Michael Chiklis. He plays a 59-year-old guy who gets a second chance to play college football when he becomes a linebacker. So imagine that episode of King of the Hill where, Bill gets to go back and play high school football so he could keep his record and keep his running back record from this guy that was given it to him by kind of like a ceremonial type of way that, and this it's the one thing that Bill had left to take over. And imagine that, but that is a movie as well. And it actually did get a lot of good reviews. 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, 60 out of 100 on Metacritic, which actually isn't that bad overall for this film, and yet nobody went to go see it. But then again, Angel Studios usually promotes their movies where, it's mostly through the churches and all that where they do much of the promotion. I mean, that's how they got The Sound of Freedom going. But yeah, this movie didn't do as well as I think they wanted it to, but hey, did well enough with critics to bring in $2.8 million overall. So, but other than that, that's all for the big new releases for this weekend. Next weekend, I think the only big thing that's noteworthy is One Battle After Another, which is going to be very curious to see how that holds up, because right now Warner Brothers is at a I think it's a 7-movie streak now of movies opening up at number 1 at the box office. The Conjuring, Last Rites was the last one. Weapons, Superman, F1 the movie, Sinners, Final Destination Bloodlines before Sinners, and then a Minecraft movie. So this movie has to be hit number 1 to surpass that record. It could do that, but then again, maybe it could not. I mean, we don't know. I don't know if the running time thing is going to be an issue with some people, but they have done a good job of pulling the movie out there. So maybe they will exactly get it out there to a lot of people. But then for the kids, there is something out there for them. A G-rated kids movie for once. Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie, which is something I knew nothing about, except I knew that Gabby's Dollhouse was a television show. And I keep seeing the trailers for this movie on some of the other kids' films I've seen during the year. It looks like a film that kids would probably get into. And they haven't had a big family film for the kids, maybe since Freakier Friday came out. So it's prime money, prime real estate right there to get a movie out there. So that's going to be very curious to see how that one performs overall. But other than that, hey, I'm sorry, we got the movie that everyone's looking forward to, and that is, of course, The Strangers Chapter 2, because, boy, The Strangers Chapter 1 was such a big hit, said no one ever. And yeah, it's coming out that weekend too, so I'm curious to see how One Battle After Another does and Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie. See how those two films do overall at the box office. But other than that, though, yeah, September's kind of coming to a slow end here, but okay, so that's the box office this weekend. So let's go ahead and get to some of the news stories we have here this weekend. And like I said, it was a very slow news week, but it started off on a sour note right from the get-go as we lost Robert Redford. Robert Redford passed away on Tuesday, September the 16th, at the age of 89 years old in his home in Sundance, Utah. Of course, Robert Redford, he was the guy. He's the guy that basically started the Sundance Film Festival, he was one of the major advocates for independent cinema. Hence, why he created the Sundance Institute and the film festival, which is weird. Which is actually interesting because this is actually the last year that they're doing the Sundance Film Festival in Utah, and they're going to move it up to Boulder, Colorado in 2027. And so that's going to be very interesting to see. It's interesting to kind of see how that played out overall. But of course, not only was he a proponent for independent cinema, he was, of course, a great actor. We saw him in great movies like his career began with stuff like in appearances in shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone. He made his Broadway debut in Barefoot in the Park before starring in the movie not too long afterwards. And then he took on a film career that led him to several memorable movies. I mean, the list of great movies that this guy was in can go on forever, really. I mean, there's a lot of great performances by this guy. Where do you begin? Barefoot in the Park's one, of course. Then you got Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where he's great in that. Jeremiah Johnson, of course, with one of the great memes of all time, with that picture of it, with that image of him that's so memorable to a lot of people. The Sting, of course. The Sting won the Best Picture that year in 1973. The Way We Were. He was also good in The Great Gatsby, the 74 Great Gatsby, 3 Days of the Condor, Bob Woodward as in All the President's Men, The Electric Horseman, A Bridge Too Far, The Natural, Out of Africa, and of course he directed Ordinary People, which won him the Best Picture Oscar in 1980 for that and also Best Director. Legal Eagles, one of his more underrated movies in my personal opinion. Havana, Not so much. Havana was kind of that film that came after Sidney Pollack's big film after Out of Africa, and they were trying to create the next Casablanca with that, which didn't end up working out well. Indecent Proposal was actually pretty good. It's a really thought-provoking movie about, hey, if a guy like Robert Redford offers you $1 million to sleep with your wife and to mean more, would you take that offer? It's a very interesting movie that kind of still holds up after all this time. But in more recent years, he's done stuff like Captain America: The Winter Soldier. He's been part of the MCU. He was also in Avengers Endgame. I think one of his more underrated movies, actually, was one that came out not too long ago with Pete's Dragon, the Disney remake, which I still think is one of the best Disney remakes overall. And he hasn't really done a whole lot since then in terms of acting. Like, his last thing that I remember seeing him in was The White House Plumbers, which was a show that was on HBO back in 2023. But other than that, though, I mean, he's been kind of quiet since then, mostly sticking around to the Sundance Film Festival and all that. This is the guy that really did hold up for a lot of these movies. He's directed a lot of great movies too. River Runs Through It. Probably my favorite thing he's ever directed was Quiz Show back in 1994, which was a really good movie about the story of about the 21 game show scandal, featuring a lot of good performances by Ralph Fiennes, John Turturro, Rob Morrow, David Paymer in there, Paul Scofield, Hank Azaria. Terrific film. That's probably my favorite directorial effort from him as a filmmaker. It's just it's a shame to see this guy go. I mean, this guy really is one of those guys that loved the movies, and you could tell from the work he did in the past, and that even up to the time of his death, he was an advocate for independent cinema, and a lot of different things. Noted for his environmental activism, Native American indigenous rights, the support he has for that, his advocacy for the LGBT community. I mean, the guy had it all, man. The guy really was one of those great actors that just really, you stick with it. You know so much of it. I mean, he's one of those guys that, he's one of the great Hollywood actors we've ever had. And, there's a lot of great movies involved with him that are definitely worth checking out. He's a legend that's definitely going to be sorely missed. So rest in peace, Robert Redford. We will miss you. Died on Tuesday at the age of 89 years old. Lived a great run. So you might remember last week on the show, we covered a story about how Seth Rogen was producing a Muppet Show reboot that was supposedly going to Fox. And it was a rumored report. We didn't hear any confirmation at all the week before. Turns out we were about 2/3 of the way right, because not only is there going to be a Muppet Show reboot, and Seth Rogen will be producing it, but it's going to be showing up as a Disney Plus special. As I've got the story here from The Hollywood Reporter. And it says here, Seth Rogen is basically a Muppet in human form, so it makes sense he would be the one to revive The Muppet Show. The Muppet Show will return in 2026 as a Disney Plus special starring and executive produced by Sabrina Carpenter. Next year marks the 50th anniversary of the original variety series, and the hope is that for the Muppet Show series special to serve as a backdoor pilot for a new season of the iconic series that debuted in the 70s. The Muppets themselves actually date back 2 decades before that. Rogen, Evan Goldberg, James Weaver, and Alex McAtee will executive produce the special for Point Grey Pictures. David Lightbody, Leigh Slaughter, and Michael Steinbach, executive producers for the Muppet Studios. The special, which sees the Muppets return to the theater to produce a variety show, also hails from 20th Television and Disney-branded television. Albertina Rizzo will write and executive produce, Alex Timbers will direct and executive produce, Matt Vogel and Eric Jacobson are also executive producers. Longtime Muppet puppeteer performers Bill Beretta, David Goulds, Eric Jacobson, Peter Lenz, David Rudman, and Matt Vogel will perform most of the Muppetry. Created by Jim Henson in 1955, the media franchise was purchased by the Walt Disney Company in 2004. Of course, I don't think I really need to tell you the rest of the story, but yeah, so this should have been the big story of the week. Hey, the Muppets are coming back. The Muppet Show is coming back on Disney Plus. See, Disney does care about the Muppets after all. And I bring this up because it's going to lead into our next story, which has easily become the biggest story of the week, because they announced this just after the story I'm about to talk about next came into play here. So I'll just say this for the Muppet Show thing. Hey, bring it on. Anytime we can see the Muppets back, that's great. That's awesome. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and get to the thing that's going to take up much of the conversation for this episode, and that is, of course, the big story going on right now. ABC has officially suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely over some comments Jimmy Kimmel made about the death of Charlie Kirk. And if you have not been following the story, you've been under a rock for the last couple of days. Can we join you under that rock? Because the last couple of days have been extremely rough. Because, this story, it gets so ridiculous and so stupid for what happened. So let's just go ahead and dive on into it. This is from The Hollywood Reporter again. Jimmy Kimmel's late night talk show is being suspended by ABC over his viral comments about Charlie Kirk. A network spokesperson said Wednesday that Jimmy Kimmel Live will be preempted indefinitely. The network's action comes just after Nexstar, one of the biggest owners of the local TV stations in the country, including 28 ABC affiliates, said it will preempt the show for the immediate future. A source says that ABC has also heard that at least one other station group about the show, suggesting that an affiliate remote may have played a role in the decision. The dramatic move follows FCC Chair Brendan Carr's threatening to take action against ABC affiliates in the wake of a Kimmel comment that many took as suggesting the Kirk shooting suspect was a MAGA Republican during his Monday monologue. More on that in a moment. A source tells The Hollywood Reporter Kimmel was prepared to address the backlash on Wednesday night's show. He planned to explain what happened and what he said, and he demonstrated how it was taken out of context. When asked by The Hollywood Reporter, the source said that Kimmel was not planning on apologizing. He felt that what he said did not require an apology. So Kimmel's original comments were basically this. We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That's it. That's the comments. I mean, they weren't saying anything bad about the guy who died, Charlie Kirk, or they were saying he was saying what was put out there. I mean, the guy that was murdered was literally a MAGA Republican, even though there were some things after that said that it's from his parents that he was kind of leaning back towards the left and all that. But I mean, the reports were already out there, and the fact that let's just get to why this is really stupid, because the basic reason why these companies like Nexstar and Sinclair were basically forcing ABC to do this was not because of what he said, but it was because of something similar to what happened with Stephen Colbert. Why did he get fired from his job? Because the Paramount merger had to happen. That was it. That was the one thing supposedly holding the Paramount merger back. And I bring this up because of what I'm about to read here. The decision by Nexstar comes as the broadcast station is seeking FCC approval for its $6.2 billion merger mega deal to acquire Tegna, a deal that would make Nexstar by far the largest owner of local TV stations in the country. They did it because he fucked with the merger. That's what basically what Stephen Colbert basically did that's the reason he got fired. It wasn't because of the low ratings and that because nobody liked him. I think it's pretty clear that Stephen Colbert still has a likable audience to everyone in Hollywood, and not just to them, but everyone in the world. But no, they did this because they had a merger that they needed to get done, and they knew that, they knew that this was a ploy to get them to do this so that they can get the merger to go through. I don't care what you think about it. It's the truth. Like, I don't care how you feel about Jimmy Kimmel or I was about to say Christian Kirk from the Charlie Kirk. I'm thinking of the guy from the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I don't care how you feel about Jimmy Kimmel. I don't care about how you feel about Charlie Kirk. This is a literal indictment of free speech in the world, and this is the problem that I had with this whole thing, voting this administration back in here after the hell that they put us through the 4 years prior to this, because everyone was warning you that this is exactly what was going to happen, and yet nobody listened. They still made this happen. We all have to suffer because, heaven forbid, if we had a president with a vagina instead of a penis, like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever, and not surprisingly, Disney is facing a lot of backlash with this. I think they said in one day, they lost over $3 billion because people kept canceling their subscriptions to Disney Plus. They kept canceling their vacations to Disney World and Disneyland and all that type of stuff. But yeah, that's how you know people clearly are on the side of Jimmy Kimmel. It's clear that this whole thing is a screw job by the administration to try to get what they want. Because you could feel it right from the get-go. I mean, the second that the guy from the FCC said, "Oh, we're also looking at The View too." Note how on The View, the show where they talk politics all the time, they were silent about what was going on with Jimmy Kimmel. They didn't talk on Thursday, they didn't talk on Friday, and I guarantee you they probably won't talk on Monday, because they know they're on thin ice right now. They know that they're probably the next in line. But here's the funny thing about this whole thing. everybody knows that that the administration is going way too far with this, because not only do you have a lot of people within the Disney studios looking at this and threatening to like not work with them. You know, a lot of the people that work within Disney, a lot of the Marvel people are standing with Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, he has that reliable brand to him. But not only that, the Republicans, several Republicans, like, you know, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, I think was Lindsey Graham or Rand Paul? I'm thinking Rand Paul. Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. These are people who work with Donald Trump. And even they are saying that this is going way too far. Like, that's how much everybody, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, they know that what they're doing right now is going way too far. And now Disney has put themselves in a no-win situation, because, you know, there's this whole thing right now where they're still talking with Kimmel about coming back to the show, but they have to do it in a way that appeases not only Kimmel, but also appeases, you know, the companies that were threatening to take him off the air. I mean, for God's sake, Sinclair literally said to Jimmy Kimmel, no, we're not going to allow him back on until he pays money to Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA and also apologizes sincerely. It's just like, what are you, a parent? Like, I mean, this whole thing makes no sense whatsoever, and you're only doing it to satisfy your needs. Like, you're not doing it to, you know, honor the memory of Charlie Kirk, who, by the way, say what you will about his feelings on separate things, the guy at least know how to take a joke. I mean, the South Park episode they did recently with Cartman as like a Charlie Kirk-like person, like, he found it funny. Like, he's a guy that at least has a sense of humor about his thing. He even said, it's an honor to be parodied by South Park. Like, he literally said this. So yeah, don't give me this whole thing about how, you know, like, he'd be happy about the fact that we're trying to stop all these people who are destroying him. No, you're doing it for your own selfish needs. And, like, it's asinine. Because the comments that Kimmel made were not enough to go ahead and do this stuff. Like, that's somebody who's trying to use their political powers to do whatever they want, and also try to use it to move the nail closer to getting what you want beforehand, which makes me extremely worried about what's going to happen when, you know, Warner Brothers eventually sells. If they sell to Paramount, is Paramount going to try to shut down John Oliver? Like, is John Oliver and company going to have to silence themselves after this point? Like, I mean, it's baffling what's going on right now, and it makes me worried. Like, no matter how you feel about late night television, no matter how you feel about these comedians on here, to go on TV is to go out there and get quote canceled because of this. Like, are you really going to bend the knee to the commander in chief on this thing right here when he's clearly in the wrong? Like, this whole he's had it out for ABC for the longest time. He's gone so far to threaten broadcast licenses if he doesn't get his way, which you can't even do. Even somebody on the FCC board has literally said, that's not something we can do. But they're probably going to find a way to do it because they're above the law. Because they're above the law. He can do whatever he wants. The president can do whatever he wants. No, you want to do whatever you want because you're the president. That's what it really is. So the latest update as of right now on midnight of September 22nd, which should be in a couple of hours when they start doing this again, you know, Disney and Jimmy Kimmel will meet again next week. This is according to Bloomberg. And Disney wants Kimmel back on the air, but has asked him to tone down his political rhetoric. And they've also have talked to Nexstar and Sinclair about carrying the show if it comes back. So they're having this conversation that's going to probably continue well into the week. But the good news is that Jimmy Kimmel's crew is getting paid for this week. And they go to Brooklyn the following week. So we'll probably get an answer to this by the time we meet back here next week about what's going to happen with Kimmel. And there's also another caveat to this whole thing that I realized, that Disney is also trying to acquire something too, the NFL. Because, of course, they had that merger with ESPN and NFL Network that was announced last month. And so now, I mean, like I said before, this is a lose-lose situation for Disney, because you put Kimmel back on the air, you not only risk the conservatives coming back at you, but you also risk potentially losing that NFL deal. Or you abide by the Trump administration and be seen as basically just bending the knee and basically saying that, you know, this is basically free speech essentially is closer to being completely banished or becoming illegal to do. Like, it's it's a really difficult situation. Now, here's what I think will probably happen. I think Disney and Jimmy Kimmel will eventually come to an agreement and they will do the show again. However, they'll do the same thing they did with Stephen Colbert, where they basically say, you come back, but we won't re-sign you to a new deal. And that will leave Kimmel to go wherever he wants to in 2026, because his contract ends in 2026. So I feel like that's probably the most likely situation that happens. When they eventually do come to an agreement, Kimmel will kind of eventually announce his retirement from the show and then go on to do something else after then, because his contract expires in 2026. And he'd been saying for a long time that he was probably going to go do something else after next year when the contract ends. So he wasn't really thinking about, continuing on with the show going forward. And maybe they replace that. Maybe they replace the show with Nightline pretty much. But that's my thinking that will probably happen when this is all said and done. But this is still a very, very scary situation. No matter who you are, no matter who you care about in this whole situation, look, I'm not going to go ahead and I tried to avoid stepping into politics when I need to, unless I need to, but I had to do it for this one here because, the whole thing is because of politics. That's the reason we're in this situation right now. I have nothing against Charlie Kirk. I don't even know anything about the guy per se, except the fact that he runs Turning Point, and he's more specific. He's a conservative. I haven't said anything because I really don't have anything to say about somebody that I don't know much about. So that's why I've been kind of silent on this whole thing. But when you're stepping in here and trying to use this as an excuse to get what you want, and that's what the administration is trying to do, of course I'm going to say something about it because it's wrong. Those comments were nothing that were offensive. They were nothing that should make somebody say that this guy needs to be taken off the air. When both sides are agreeing that nothing that this guy said, Jimmy Kimmel, what he said, is wrong, and they're putting a lot of the blame towards the FCC head, that's a problem. That's a problem that needs to be addressed and assembled and get taken care of before it gets completely out of hand. But who knows if that's even possible now. But if this really is the beginning of the end of free speech, we still have to figure out what happens in the next couple of weeks and months, especially days, which, like I said, I think we'll have a resolution to this whole thing by the time next week happens, by the time we meet up back here. But if this really is the beginning of the end of free speech and pretty much life as we know it, all I can say is, these 7 simple words to kind of wrap this segment up here. There you go, a little Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to kind of move it back onto the more funnier side here. That song is just perfect for the situation that we're in right now. Just everything that's going on in the world. If this is really the end, all you can say is so long and thanks for all the fish. So, hopefully we'll get a resolution to this by next week, and hopefully it'll be something where it doesn't completely mean the end of the world, but if it does, like I said, so long and thanks for all the fish. But with that said, let's go ahead and get the heck on out of here by taking a look at some recommendations. And it's a big week for newer blockbusters, if you even want to call it that, because, of course, the biggest new release is going to be Superman, which, going to be coming out on 4K Blu-ray. Walmart's got a Steelbook edition. I think it's a Walmart edition or it's an Amazon edition, but I should have it by this time next week, I would hope, but the fact that they haven't sent me a thing saying, Walmart will usually send me an email about, make sure your address is perfect, make sure your address is okay, and then they send it out almost immediately. I have not gotten that email, so I'm really worried that they're going to screw me over on this one here. And if they do that for the Steelbook, which I know is going to be very hard to find out there without spending $80, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be really pissed about that. But in addition to Superman, we also have Megan 2.0, which, definitely a step down from the first Megan movie. And then you have 28 Years Later, which starts off strong and then ends on a sour note. But we also have Pete Davidson in the horror film The Home. Season 2 of The Last of Us comes out on Blu-ray this week as well. What else? Oh, one of my favorite movies of the year that I've seen, Flow. Criterion Collection's putting out a brand new release of that movie, and it's one you should definitely check out. If you haven't seen Flow, it's definitely one of the year's best movies, and one of last year's best movies, but I saw it this year, so it's going to be in my top 10 for 2025. And then you've also got catalog stuff like Fringe and The Big Bang Theory. Complete series sets are coming out on Blu-ray. Corpse Bride's coming out on 4K for the first time. Chucky, the complete series, is coming out on Blu-ray. Then you got stuff like Night of the Living Dead, the 90s version. Airplane 2, the sequel. The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. So there is a wide assortment of new titles. Classic titles coming out. Sound of Music's getting a 4K release for the first time. So yeah, it's a very, very good time, good week for new releases. New releases, older releases, whatever you want. They're all available out there. Hopefully you can find them at reasonable prices. So yeah, take that for what you will. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. We are back next Sunday. Let me rephrase that again. That's it for this week. We will be back with this format 2 weeks from now on October 6th, because next week the Reviewing Network Live Sunday Night NFL Rewatch is back for the Micah Parsons Bowl. We'll have the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys, as we'll cover that game as a flex game I put in here. So we'll cover that game for you coming up after the game next Sunday. Expect a little preview of the opening coming up later this week here on the channel, and along with other videos as well. With all that said, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button. Check out the last episode we did. Check out our playlist below. And with all that said, thanks for watching this. I will see you guys next week, and until then, we are out.